The morning began like any other quiet, predictable, safe. Or at least that's what I thought. Sunlight spilled across the driveway as I stepped outside with my coffee. Keys dangling from my fingers, my mind already drifting toward the day ahead. For weeks I had been trying to convince myself that life was finally calming down. That the tension in my chest was just leftover anxiety. That the strange coincidences were nothing more than my imagination working overtime. Then I dropped my keys. They slid under the car with a soft metallic scrape. I sighed, crouching down to retrieve them, the cold cement pressing into my knees. That's when I saw it. At first, my brain refused to register what my eyes were staring at. A small black object, taped carefully beneath the car near the rear axle. Too deliberate to be debris, too clean to be accidental, a tiny light blinked once. Slow, patient, alive. My breath caught in my throat. I reached for it with trembling fingers, peeling back the tape inch by inch. The moment it came loose, a wave of dread crashed over me so hard I had to sit back on my heels. I didn't need to Google it. I didn't need confirmation. I knew exactly what it was. A tracker. Time seemed to stretch, the world muffled around me. Every strange moment from the past few weeks replayed at once. How someone always seemed to know where I was. How questions came with answers I hadn't given. How I felt watched even when I was alone. I wasn't crazy. The realization didn't bring relief. It brought fear. I closed my hand around the device, feeling its cold weight against my palm. Someone had been following me. Someone had been mapping my life, my movements, my routines. The thought made my skin crawl. And then the question arrived, sharp and unavoidable. Who? There was only one name that made my stomach twist the way it did. Evan, the man who once told me love meant protection. The man who promised he would never hurt me. The man I had walked away from 3 months ago because loving him felt like slowly losing myself. I remembered his voice, gentle but probing. You were out late last night, right? I remembered his smile when I brushed off his questions. I remembered how often he accidentally showed up where I was. I had told myself it was coincidence. That I was being unfair, that not every concern was control, but here it was, proof. My hands shook as I stood, glancing around the empty street. Suddenly every parked car felt suspicious. Every passing sound felt louder. I was angry, but beneath it all, I was hurt in a way that cut deeper than rage. How long had he been watching me? How long had he decided I didn't deserve privacy? I went inside and locked the door behind me, leaning against it as if it could protect me from what I had just uncovered. My heart pounded in my ears. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream. I wanted to call him and demand an explanation. But something stopped me. A quiet, unfamiliar calm settled in. If Evan wanted to track me, then fine. I would let him, just not where he expected. By the time night fell, the tracker sat on my kitchen table like a silent accusation. I hadn't turned it off. I hadn't destroyed it. I just stared at it, circling it slowly as if it might explain itself if I looked long enough. Sleep didn't come easily. Every time I closed my eyes, memories surfaced, moments I once labeled as love, now stripped bare and exposed for what they truly were. Evan hadn't started cruel. He never raised his voice in the beginning. He learned me instead, learned my routines, my fears, my weaknesses. He wrapped control in concern and called it devotion. I just worry about you, he used to say when I questioned his constant check-ins. The world isn't safe, he'd add, eyes soft, hands warm around mine, and I believed him. At first, it felt flattering. Someone wanted to know where I was. Someone cared enough to notice details, but the concern slowly turned heavy, like a blanket that smothered instead of comforted. He questioned my friends. He frowned when I made plans without him. He memorized my schedule better than I had. When I laughed it off, he laughed too. When I pulled away, he pulled tighter. The night I ended things, his face didn't show heartbreak, it showed panic. As if I'd taken something that belonged to him. "You're overreacting," he said, voice calm, dangerous in its restraint. "I just love you. Love shouldn't make you feel watched." I remembered the first time I noticed something was wrong. I'd mentioned going to a cafe in passing, then changed my mind. An hour later, Evan texted, "That place is crowded today. You'd hate it." I had stared at my phone for a long time after that. Sitting alone in my kitchen now, the truth settled into place with a sickening clarity. He hadn't been guessing. He hadn't been lucky. He had been tracking me. The betrayal hurt more than I expected. It wasn't just about the device. It was about every lie wrapped in tenderness. Every moment I defended him to myself. Every time I blamed my instincts instead of trusting them. I felt foolish, vulnerable, exposed, but beneath the hurt, something else was growing. Anger, not the explosive kind. The quiet, focused kind that sharpens your thoughts and stills your hands. I picked up the tracker and turned it over, studying it like a puzzle. If Evan wanted control, then control would be exactly what I took from him. Confronting him wouldn't help. He would deny it, twist the truth, make me doubt myself again. No, I needed something cleaner, smarter. I imagined his face when the pattern of my life suddenly broke. When the certainty he relied on vanished. When his illusion of ownership slipped through his fingers. For the first time since leaving him, I smiled. I wasn't his anymore, whatever he thought he was monitoring. My fear, my loneliness, my dependence, he had it wrong. He had underestimated the woman he tried to cage. I placed the tracker into my purse, zipped it shut, and stood by the window, watching the street lights flicker on one by one. Tomorrow, I would give him a journey to follow, just not the one he deserved. The next morning felt strangely light, as if the weight I'd been carrying had finally shifted off my shoulders. I moved through the day with deliberate calm, every step measured, every breath steady. The tracker rested inside my purse, silent and obedient, unaware that its purpose was about to change. I chose the truck stop an hour outside the city for a reason. Evan would recognize my usual routes: work, grocery store, gym, home. I needed a place that didn't belong to my routine. Somewhere random enough to confuse him, but logical enough to hold his attention. The parking lot was massive, stretching endlessly beneath a pale sky. Engines rumbled low and constant, a mechanical chorus of movement and escape. Long-haul trucks lined up like giants at rest, their trailers marked with destinations that felt impossibly far away. I sat in my car for a moment, watching. My heart wasn't racing, it wasn't trembling. I felt clear. One truck caught my eye, a deep blue trailer with a small Canadian flag decal near the back. Canada, far enough to matter, far enough to break the pattern Evan believed he owned. I stepped out of my car, the wind biting lightly at my jacket. No one paid attention to me. I was just another passerby in a place built on movement. I knelt beside the trailer, my fingers working quickly, confidently. The same way his had when he'd hidden the tracker beneath my car. The irony didn't escape me. As I taped the device into place, a memory surfaced, Evan telling me once, half joking, "You'd be lost without me." I almost laughed out loud. I stood, brushed the dust from my hands, and walked away without looking back. The drive home felt different. The road stretched open, free of invisible lines tying me to someone else's obsession. I turned off my phone and let silence fill the car. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't explaining myself to anyone. Hours passed, then a day, nothing. No messages, no sudden appearances, no passive-aggressive comments disguised as concern. The absence was louder than any confrontation could have been. I slept deeply that night, dreaming of wide roads and open skies. On the second day, I woke up smiling. I imagined Evan checking his phone, watching the dot move farther and farther away, watching it leave the city, leave the state, leave the country. I wondered how long it took before confusion turned into panic. Had I really disappeared? Was I running? Why wasn't I answering? I went about my life like nothing had happened. Grocery shopping, laundry, coffee with a friend who noticed quietly that I seemed lighter. I didn't explain. Some victories are private. By evening, I knew the moment was coming. The kind of moment you feel before it arrives, like pressure in the air. I left my phone on the table and cooked dinner, humming softly. Control had shifted, and Evan didn't even know it yet. The tracker was still working. That meant his illusion was too. And illusions, I had learned, are most dangerous right before they shatter. When my phone finally rang, I didn't jump. I simply turned toward it, calm and ready, as a smile touched my lips. The chase was over. The reckoning was about to begin. The phone rang again before I picked it up. I let it vibrate against the table, watched the screen light up with an unfamiliar number, and allowed myself one deep breath. Not to steady fear, but to savor the moment. When I answered, I didn't speak. "Where are you?" Evan's voice burst through the line, sharp and frayed, stripped of the calm control he always wore so carefully. "Why aren't you answering me?" I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. "I'm at home," I said evenly. He laughed short and panicked. "Don't lie, I can see you. You've been driving for hours. You crossed the border. Do you have any idea what you're doing?" There it was. The truth spilling out without restraint. My fingers tightened around the phone, not with anger, but with clarity. "You can see me?" I asked softly. Silence, then his breathing changed, heavy, uneven. I just mean I know you're not here. You know because you put a tracker on my car," I said. No accusation, just fact. The pause stretched long enough to feel like a confession in itself. "I was worried about you," he finally said, his voice dropping into the familiar tone he used when he wanted forgiveness. "You disappeared. I needed to know you were safe." "No," I replied. "You needed to know where I was." He started talking fast then, excuses tumbling over each other, love, fear, mistakes, promises, words he had used before, hoping they would still work. I let him talk. When he finally stopped, I spoke again. "You've been following a truck." "What?" His voice cracked. "A truck." I repeated calmly, "Headed north, probably won't stop for a while." The sound he made then was raw, almost animal. "What did you do?" "I returned what you lost," I said. "Your sense of control." I could hear it in his breathing, the unraveling, the realization that the certainty he relied on was gone, that the map he trusted was a lie. "You can't just disappear," he said, desperation seeping into every word. "You don't understand what you're doing to me." I closed my eyes, memories flashing behind them. Every moment I had felt small, questioned, monitored. "I understand perfectly," I said. "You taught me." For the first time he sounded afraid, truly afraid. Not of losing me, but of losing power. "I loved you," he whispered. The words no longer held weight. "Love doesn't spy," I said. "Love doesn't trap." He started crying then, the sound sharp and uncontrolled. I didn't feel satisfaction in his pain. I felt release. "This ends now," I said gently. "Don't call me again." Before he could respond, I ended the call. The silence that followed was profound, heavy, clean. I set my phone down and walked to the window. Outside, the street was quiet, ordinary, unchanged. And yet everything inside me was different. I wasn't running. I wasn't hiding. I was free. Some revenge is loud, some is violent. Mine was distance, truth, and the calm knowledge that he would never find me again. Not because I vanished, but because I finally stepped out of his reach. And that was sweeter than anything he ever gave me.